Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who would like to address the board?
Nothing.
Anybody online?
Fine.
Nope.
Excellent, we'll move on. Financial report here today, that was in your packet. Any questions on a financial report?
Just one thing that's not showing on there, on your reports, your Excel pump check you just signed
Yeah,
came in today.
okay.
And that will not be reflective on your financials until next month.
I just had one question was, for December, you had the 2025 budget come in at 2,703,000, and then on this one, I see at the beginning, it's 1,789,000. I just was wondering.
Not prepared for that question. I
I
don't know
know,
how to answer it because I don't have anything in front of me.
I looked at last month, I was in here. This one's right here. Oh, did I miss something?
Oh, because, let's see. I took off the beginning fund balance. That's not applicable to your, what you're trying to track throughout the year. You're tracking that with the line.
Good answer. All right, any other questions on the financial report? That makes it very nice to have access and.
Yeah.
Good.
Line.
I'll do that for you every month. then.
Yeah, looks great. Sounds good. Next item, staff reports, Paul Grant.
He is not online yet. So we can,
Move on to Kim Boyd.
Can you text Paul and ask him where he's at?
yep, I did.
Let's see. I put grant updates on here. I want to let you guys know, because I know we're gonna have some discussion tonight about the well on that project and such. Through a conversation I had with, the Eastern Central Plains Council, they've hired a consultant firm. That's gonna write a grant, pertaining to roads and such. And through that conversation, I started a conversation with them about this well. Because they specialize in going after state and federal money, for various projects. And, I explained the concerns we have with taking on the debt and the fact that we only have one grant so far. They feel very confident that we can, partner with them, do a collaboration with them, whatever, to seek more funding toward that well. They gave me a couple options that are available to us. Scott has also shared something, some options for us in a conversation we had yesterday that he'll share later. But I think it would be worth going down that rabbit hole. You know, if we have an option between going with this other older well with less acre feet and less usage of it, probably not as best quality water as we would out of the brand new well. I think we should at least try to explore it a little further. Some of these grants that they're recommending are very competitive, but we've managed to get some flips in the door that would allow us to pursue those. We have some connections now that we didn't have to begin with, and I would like to be able to engage with them a little further. They said that if we went with them to do this service, they'd probably be about $2,000. We have a budget on there for a grant writer anyway. It would be no different than that. But I would get a better number on what their services would be and what the cost of that would be by having a further conversation with them. Right now, they're on a deadline to get this big grant in by the last week of this month. So I'm giving them a couple weeks before I engage them a little further on this. But I'm gonna try to set up a meeting with them the first week of February, if that's okay with you guys.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's stuff out there.
I just when it's just funny, because just when we were about to forego looking at that any further, you know, things just kind of fall in our lap. So
Sure.
I don't want to just put it aside without before I ever wonder,
Absolutely worth looking into, I think.
Okay, that's the only update I have right now. They just fell in my lap last Thursday, so I'm gonna engage with them a little further and see what we can get out of them. And I'll have
Okay.
another report for you next month. Okay.
Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and Paul's trying to get logged in.
Okay.
Mine, pretty simple, again this month, and forgot to put in my little graphy thing, the weather and stuff, I forgot. So our water loss was only 8%, 8.5%, which is really good. I sent out 14 warning letters this month and 2 shut-off letters. Last month, everybody paid up, so I didn't have to shut anybody off last month, which was good.
So you're a good guy.
Yeah, I'm a good guy this month. We did have one person come in, the person who has been shut off since October. Came in a little angry, wanting to know why they were still getting charged. Because their water shut off, and I told them that there is a minimum charge every month, no matter if you're, partaking in water or not. So they said that they were going to speak with their attorney. I have not heard anything since. But just know that that's out there. But other than that, yeah, things are going good. We were kind of talking before the meeting. It's not on here, but I did get Diamond Maps signed up and signed in. So, and they sent me a bunch of training videos. I like Scott and I were talking, it's like 2 weeks, 8 hours a day worth of videos. So Scott's we're gonna set, yeah, he was like, it's a lot of videos. So Scott and I are going to get together probably a week or so, and he's gonna kind of run me through a training on how to do the basic stuff and get it started. So pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it should be help. It should be pretty cool once it gets going. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's about all I got.
Okay, I don't see Paul yet.
No,
Okay. We'll move on then. Rate and asset study, Scott Thomas, Colorado Rural Water.
All right, I think I've met everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I like my job. One thing I like about it is I get to roll out of town when the meeting's done. So presumably, presumably.
Say the
But-
right thing.
That's the key. That's the key. No, I really, I enjoy, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My official title is Technical and Training Specialist. And this is a new title for me. It's another federal program, but I was a circuit rider before this with rural water. So really, I'm still doing the circuit riding, but now I'm doing more training. In addition to putting 30,000 miles a year on the car, about 70 nights in hotels, all throughout Colorado, which is a pleasure getting there. But it's the trip in between that, gets a little dicey sometimes. But yeah, all the way from Cortez to Julesburg and, back again. So I meet with primarily systems under 10,000 people. And I do, my background as far as this job is concerned is heavy in water operations. So I've got my A and 4 water certificate. Wastewater, I've got a 4 and a D. So I've got an operations background, which is really helpful for what I'm doing here. As well as before that, regulations and finance is what I was in. So this kind of all come together with what I'm doing on this. So I'll help systems all across the spectrum, from doing strategic planning like this with capital projects and figuring out where the money is going to come from, and actually rolling up the sleeves and wading through all the regulatory crapola comes with getting state and federal funds. So at the same time, I'll figure out why your plant isn't dosing right, or, help me find out how to isolate this leak. Town of Empire, I won't tell too many stories. Town of Empire, when they ran out of water, we were up there trying to help them figure out where's your leak for 3 weeks. And, wild story on that, just to kind of emphasize how important what you do is a water board and wastewater. 3 weeks they were out of water up there. I drove into town for a follow-up and there's a smoking building on the side of the road. And they had just got their water back the day before a fire happened on Main Street.
Wow.
That's crazy. So, staying on top of your assets, knowing their condition, knowing when you're gonna need to replace them, and how much that's going to cost, and where are you gonna get the money? That's always should be the forefront of our mind, particularly with the board. It's extremely important, because you don't want to end up like those guys. I mean,
Yeah.
there were some people that protested in very unique ways that, I'll share offline sometime, but they made their point. So this is absolutely key. And I'm spending a lot of time doing this now because a lot of towns have old pipe, old plants, and to replace them is a lot of money. And you just hope that you're on the nice side of the linear foot spectrum. Because right now to replace a foot of pipe it's about down here, probably 150 a linear foot, I think. But if you get up into Leadville, I'm working with them up there and their pipe is 9 feet deep. It's 250, rock everywhere. So staying ahead of that is a key. Here in Kiowa, you've got kind of a fire to put out with this getting another well. Because just having one well it's kind of living on the edge, So I'm glad you're doing it and all the best, knock on wood, that you're successful with everything about it. So with all of that happening in a lot of towns with a lot of old pipe, I'm doing a lot of this, what I call asset management planning, which is looking as far out as 20 years. What am I gonna need? When am I gonna need it? How am I gonna pay for it? Simple as that. When you got something in your face, like needing a redundant well, so you're not just dependent on one, well, you deal with that first. And then as resources allow and time allows, you start looking further and further out. So what I'm doing tonight is really limited to what if we don't do anything? No capital improvement whatsoever. What's that gonna do to our rates? How does it look? And then I've also done another scenario with the $4 million well project included. And what are you gonna do about that? How does that end up looking? So that's where I am here, but the brass ring is to get it to where you got a 20-year plan and you know what all of your assets are, and we're here to help you all the way through that. Know what your assets are, when they need to be replaced, how much they're gonna cost. 20 years is the ideal, to where you get down to knowing every year, how much does it cost to maintain my system?
Right.
That water tower is gonna go at some point, the pipe's gonna go. So when you break that down annually, you can come up with a number. And that's the ideal, but that takes a lot of work to get everything inventory. Valves, hydrants, pumps, motors, on and on and on. So that's the ideal. You start with kind of putting out the fires though, and when you need a redundant water source, that's huge. So your focus is right on that. So this is, part of asset management planning. I use a software, and this is not a software demonstration. This is a tool that I use that Florida Rural Water came up with. They paid a ton of money for it. And it's designed to do asset management planning for water and wastewater. That's all it does. And it saves, instead of having to create 50 spreadsheets and put everybody to sleep routinely, you make an immediate input and it gives you an immediate output. But you gotta know what you're doing with the input. So I'll move into now what I did and how it ends up looking. So let me see if I can get on the Zoom screen here. Is share send requests. So that's gonna probably come to you, Sasha. Right. Share, where are we? Right screen. On.
Thanks so much.
There it is.
Just
All right, so I'm gonna try not to put you to sleep here with
wrote her down.
kind of nuts and bolts of this, but I want you to know when I show you the final results here, what went into it. And so I'm gonna walk this, apart from this being a software that I think they spent something like 200 grand on in Florida. And the reason they did it down there is if you want to get state funding in Florida, you have to do this. And you have to go through Florida rural water, and that's why they bought this software, is to be able to do that. So, it's pretty small up there. I hope you can see it. I don't know what to do to
Let me see if I can.
enlarge it. You see it all right? It's tiny. Let me see.
That's better.
See if it'll enlarge as,
Can you?
yeah, there we go.
That's better, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so apart from this just being a software, it's a good roadmap of how you come up with this asset management plan. And a huge piece of this is rates. Obviously, because it all boils back down to rates. So what this does, the program is called Rev Plan. And here's the different things that I incorporated in the result, in the product. We look at the summary data, which is going to be how many taps do you have, how much water do you produce, how much wastewater do you treat. Capital financing plan is just a high flyover. What are your revenues? What are your expenses? Assets, I'm not going into that because we're focused on no capital improvement and no repair and replacement, just because of bandwidth. I'll show you, well, no, I'm not gonna get into that right now, but that's a comprehensive inventory. That's a lot of man hours, and we're here to help you do it, but it's one step at a time. Then existing debt, which you've got a couple, the two bonds, water and wastewater. So this incorporates that. Then it incorporates O&M. Capital improvement plan. I've developed two different scenarios here. So I've got one model for no capital improvement and then one model for the well at $4 million and showing you how that pans out. And then anticipated debt, which what you want to hear is zero. But everybody wants to hear that, but so anticipated debt will be incorporated into the well one, and there's assumptions involved there. And then this program really delves deeply into customer data and revenue. So it'll look at all your different customer classes. You got 3 or 4, you've got residential, commercial, governmental, non-school, and then school. So it breaks each one of those down, says, okay, what do you charge? What's your base rate? And then what are your tier rates? And it incorporates that data. So when it asks you how much is each class using, how much water, it'll calculate your revenues based off of that. So it's a real number. And it all ended up jiving pretty nicely. Then you got other revenues here, which will be non-rate revenues. So everything that doesn't come from what you charge for a gallon of water. Finally, this program wants you to fund utility reserves. You know, it's a key component for planning, and it has a default of 9 months rather of O&M as a reserve for whatever emergency and what have you. So this program targets that. So when I incorporate all of that, any questions so far on that? So that's the data entry. And I could go through screen by screen, but it gets weedy and I want to make the point.
Sure.
So you finally get to the point where you get an output. And it does an output in graphic form and tabular form. So you got graphs, and then you have tables that are all the numbers feeding the graphs. So when I did this particular model here is the one that does not have the well in it. Okay, and here's what it shows. Right here, what you're seeing are rate adjustments. But the graphic output looks like this. Okay, so it starts with drinking water revenue requirements. So this graph, you see it's a 20-year graph, and it'll break down, okay, the red line is existing rates, the gray dotted line is proposed rates. And you see here it's flatlined, and then up here, there's some proposed rate increases. Because what this model does, it builds in a 3% inflation factor per year. So you got to keep up with that. And you can see while we're on this, what's happening with the water is you're actually generating more from your current rates than what your expenses are, which are debt service of $167,000 a year, and then operating expenses $229,742 with this 2026. So that's the output here. So you see it's going along pretty well, and you're actually a little bit above there. And then with the increase in inflation, you got to stay up with that. And what I can do up here is year by year, put in an adjustment, and it will immediately, I could type in 3 right there, and it would immediately adjust that graph and immediately adjust the tables, which is what makes this pretty slick. Okay, so that's the water side, and you can see here, I'm going to go down to the wastewater, which is not as good a picture. You can see starting off that the wastewater is a little bit under what the revenues and expenses are. So you're probably balancing your budget by the fact your water is a little high and your wastewater is a little low. It's important to have each fund be square, because when you're applying for any federal or state funding, they'll want to see for that wastewater fund, what do your numbers look like? Right? So you got to break them out, and you want each one to be paying its way, instead of kind of having a combination of the two where one might compensate for the other. Another real big one here, you got debt service. So the next graph down here will show how well are you covering your debt. And your bond requires 120% of your net revenue. And so this red bar right here is 120%, or the program calls it a 1.2. So that's why you see here that you're, with the rate adjustments that I did up top, you're meeting your debt requirement. And when you apply for federal funds, and trust me on this one, I've been way down the road with the USDA Rural Development, with the Colorado revolving fund. Those are the two big ones for for money. DOLA is another one. DOLA is not nearly as nasty. You know, there's just a lot of thoughts going through my mind and not a lot of them are good. But because, you know what, anyway, I'm gonna get back to this. So when you apply for these, for state and federal funding, they wanna see this. They wanna see, and I draft these routinely for towns that have to get funding. And the state or USDA will say, I need to see this, and this is what they get. So, that's where that 120% comes in. And here are the adjustments that I made. The water was a surplus, but the wastewater is about 22% short, which puts you for your, let me go one more graph down here. For your typical monthly bill, this will also show typical monthly bill at 5,000 gallons. And so that 22 on wastewater would take it from 55 to 67. So it'd be a $12 increase to get it to where the wastewater fund is pulling its own weight. Okay, so that's really it. Otherwise, the water, you can see it doesn't take off until, you know, you're kind of at a surplus until 2029. And the water, you know, 2029, you start making your 3% adjustment, your 5% adjustment intermittently. You know, here I put 3%, 0%, 5%, 3%. These are all essentially just inflation adjustments. And what will happen there if you don't do them is sooner or later that number gets big.
Right.
You know, so and I tried to pause a little bit, you know, a couple years off here. So this can be tweaked. I mean, it could be 2% this year and 4%. That's, you know, that's kind of some fine tuning. But the general point is that you're going to be making inflation adjustments to keep up with inflation on O&M. Right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's really, and it had to be 22% on wastewater, because not only are you trying to cover your O&M and debt, but you've got that extra 20%, 120% that the bond folks want,
Right.
which is USDA. So yeah, that's the nut of it.
Right.
Okay. Now, this one, next scenario, any questions thus far? So next scenario, I did the same thing. It's just a different model with the $4 million well project. And what I want to say as a preface to the well project is that get that out of there. There we go. There's some major assumptions built into this. You see exact same thing that I did in that other model. This has now got the $4 million project. And I'm gonna jump right to the capital improvement plan part of this software and show you what I did with it and why. Talk about why. Because you gotta have an assumption for it. Ready to go. So you see here, I split it 50-50. 50% loan, 50% grant. So 2 million grant, 2 million loan. Now, why did I choose 50-50? Because I don't want to be, you know, way too liberal and say, oh, you're going to get 80% grant. And I don't want to be the other end of the spectrum. So I just picked the middle just to give you an idea of it. But I want to tell you about the funding world as it is right now. Two primary funding agencies, and there's really 3 and 4 if you, DOLA, DOLA's just in the bag. It's competitive, but Kim, you've already got an okey doke from DOLA.
Mhm.
And so that's $1 million grant. You have to match it, and you can match it with other grants. So the way SRF, which is the state revolving fund. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these funding? Okay, let me build the foundation here. The biggest funding sources for utilities, for water and wastewater utilities, is gonna be USDA Rural Development, State Revolving Fund. And I'm listing these kind of in order of their potential. USDA has the most potential for money. USDA Rural Development, then State Revolving Fund. Then, because you're doing, there's another whole area called the congressional funding, which Kim just serendipity, is found this guy who we're actually hiring as a lobbyist, to try to get money for small systems at the state house. And that is, so congressional funding is where you're enlisting the help of Congress people to they get allotments, which it's the word earmark when you get right down to it. They get their hand in the pot before the USDA does, before the EPA does, and before the state does. So if you can enlist them, it's wonderful, but it's the most competitive of the funding sources. But if you have a guy like Steve, I think, I'm not even gonna try the last name. Anyway, he can cut to the chase, and so you're not spinning your wheels and waiting to hear, and it can take forever. If you don't have a contact, getting the congressional funding it can take years. So I'll back up to USDA now. So congressional funding is out there, and it can be very, a large pot of money and grant 100%. So it's worth pursuing big time, and she's got a great connection there, and I just commend the work that they both do day in, day out. I have the choice of, to a degree, picking who I get to work with, which I really like. And I really enjoy working with them. They're industrious and great to work with. So, I just want to let you know, because sometimes you get inside, I get to see a lot of different towns, a lot of different boards, and they're awesome. So, and she's got this connection with the lobbyist for that congressional. So that is a really promising opportunity right there. So that kind of set aside, that's its own world. And that's all about Congress. So USDA RD, Rural Development, they will potentially, according to regulation, they will grant up to 80%. With a floor of usually 20%. So somewhere on that spectrum. And that's all about how many people are applying. And then how much money do they have available? And it's just gotten kind of bleak. I working with a bunch of towns, and you can get loan money all day, every day. And the rates, you've probably seen them before, the rates right now with USDA, for a town like Kiowa, which you have a disadvantaged status because your median, your MHI is below the state average for now. It keeps coming east on you though. I mean, Elizabeth, I think, is borderline. I'm working with them out there, and they're borderline on that MHI. But, yeah, and if you go above that MHI, then the grant money is off the table. All you can do is loans. And you can do those all day with either USDA or SRF. Just talking this morning with the USDA rep, they're 2.5%. So it's a 2.5% loan, 40-year term. So it's not, and that is, I actually used 3 in this model. I used 3% just to be a little bit conservative. But today, right out of Allison Ruiz's mouth was 2.5%. So cash flow wise, it's not too bad, but it's still a lot of money. Over 300 taps, yeah. So, anywhere from 20 up to 80, but you won't know until they send you the letter where you're at on that spectrum. And you don't have to sign it, when they send it to you, but that is the spectrum. And it's pretty much the state side, the SRF side is a little bit, it's not as one, USDA, there's no cap on that project amount. SRF, for loans, you can get what you can afford. They'll look at your finances, how much debt can you afford to carry? But on the grant side, for SRF, they'll only generally go up to 50%. Okay, so that's why I like for, larger project, well, any project, I like to start with USDA. They're more, and they're really, people are always saying, oh, it's, so much more of a hassle to go with USDA than the state. No, it isn't. It's just, they're both a hassle, and they both want all the environmental reports, and they want to build American, buy American, and all of these kind of hoops that you have to jump through, which part of what we do is walk you through the application process, because it's, if you look at a flow chart of all of that, it's just nuts, it just makes you dizzy looking at the flow chart, much less having to walk through it. So we will do that. So SRF, and then SRF, 1 year they'll have no money, and then the next year they've got 20 million. It's extremely unpredictable. And why it's called that state revolving fund is when you repay a loan, it goes back into the fund to get loaned back out, is the way that runs. So those are the 2 biggies by far. Following closely with your well project, and I owe you an email on this, is the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And because it's a raw water project, you can apply. If it were a finished water project, like a new tank or replacing pipe, no. So, but they're smaller, they're $500,000 max grant, which isn't bad. And then there's some other kind of outliers like Bureau of Reclamation. But the problem with them is that they won't co-fund. Whereas with USDA and SRF, they'll co-fund. And you can get private sources. And private sources are when everything else doesn't work. Because your interest rate's gonna be significantly higher, probably almost twice what the federal and state funding is. And, they're a little bit more strict on different stuff. You don't have to, the nice thing on that side is you don't have to jump through all the regulatory hoops with the cultural studies and the environmental studies, and which it can really slow a project down. So with all of that in mind, any questions about that? That's really the high flyover of federal and state funding.
Right.
There's all kinds of little ones out there like economic opportunity and all these things, which are going to be maybe, five digit, tens of thousands, not millions. And they're out there, but for a project like this, those are the 2 ones you're going to first deal with, and then if those don't work out, you start looking other places. So yeah, that's the scenario, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board is competitive. It's competitive, but redundant well would move you right up the list. When you've just got one well, that redundancy is a plus in their eyes. You know, that it's more critical, you're more competitive that way. So, I think that's just about covered the waterfront there. Give you the current situation with the USDA, and, you know, Colorado City has, I'm like a PhD in this because of Colorado City. I mean, they've got so much going on. They're hardworking, good folks. Their system just got behind. Then the state came in and said, well, we're gonna put you under an enforcement order, and then we're gonna fine you because your disinfection byproducts are too high. So you gotta put in a $20 million water plant now. And so there's 15 people on that video call. Department of Health, the State Revolving Fund, the USDA, the whole thing. So if there's news, I know it, because we're meeting at least once a month with these folks. All of that is to say that right now, nobody has money because of these continuing resolutions. But your planning horizon is taking you out past when supposedly they'll have a budget. I don't think they've had one for 20 years. I'm not mistaken, but they'll do another continuing resolution, which I think this one is set to expire in March. And then they'll know what kind of funding that they're gonna get. But if you ask them today, and there's filing deadlines for all of this, but if you ask them today, they would just say, no, we're out of money. You know, so that's what you have to deal with, you know, and you just keep marching, you file, you apply what you gotta do, and you find out when they send you the letter. I wish it were more predictable than that, but it's not. And then SRF, they don't call it a grant, they call it loan forgiveness. So you take out the loan and then they forgive a part of it. You know, and they'll tell you upfront what they will forgive. So that's kind of the latest and greatest there, and, you know, not very encouraging.
Right.
So
But I'm used to that.
as that relates to our conversation tonight on rate increases, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're good on the drinking water side of it. But in order to get caught up where we need to be on the sewer side of it, they really would need to institute a $12 increase.
Mhm,
On the sewer part,
mhm.
and that's
Yeah,
if we don't do this part.
Correct. So, yeah, that is correct. And then, so let's look at what, if you gotta borrow half of that, what do you have to do?
And I think as for a process, they told us up front, we would qualify for up to 80% loan forgiveness.
Up to. Yeah, could be less, won't be more,
Yeah.
but yeah, 80 is the max. And they'll look at things like, you know, are you under an enforcement order? What's the criticality of the project? Which yours is way high on that, thank God you're not under an enforcement order. You know, and then the MHI factor is, all of that is dialed into what your ultimate award is gonna be. So, but yeah, if you're gonna do, to pay that 40-year loan at 3% is what I calculated it at. Little bit conservative, it would be a 30% immediate increase in 2026, which would take you up on the water side, 65 up to 85. So that'd be a $20 increase That's if you're carrying that loan starting in 2026. And you can see it's the same thing, and that you're meeting your 120%. Give or take, this kind of the way the numbers worked, and you get that initial increase done, and then once again, it's just inflation adjustment periodically. Okay. So, I hope it's 80%, but you just don't know. And you kind of get tired of hearing it, but they say, oh, well, we'll find out. Oh, no, we're gonna find out in December. We're gonna find out in March, on and on. So yeah, that takes care of that debt service, is what that does. Again, at 120%, which is the reserve that they're gonna require, 120% of net revenue. You don't, so leave it at that.
So
Um,
I was gonna say, going back up,
yeah, what do you wanna see?
you had 30% on the water and 20%
On the sewer,
on the sewer.
yeah, which is,
So what would that take the sewer to?
on the sewer side, I think
Mhm.
55, that's that $11. It's the same thing I had in the
Okay.
other model.
Okay.
Because your debt is gonna come in on the water side,
Right, okay.
all right? So, yeah, these are your typical bills, for a 5,000 gallon usage. And
And is that 5,000 based on an average, or is that, where did you come up with that number?
just,
Or just
that's a typical usage.
typical average?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yours is a little higher, but rule of thumb, you probably, well, I don't know, you may have, livestock or something, I don't know, but typical residential user is gonna be about 5,000, average. That's very typical.
Okay.
And then here's where your reserve is. I wanted to show you that. Remember, we talked about that 270 days O&M, that's that red line. You can see you're building reserve because you're putting 120% annually into that debt. So that 20% actually becomes part of that reserve. They just want to make sure that reserve is yours, but they want to make sure that your numbers accommodate that.
Right.
Considering your O&M. So yeah, that's the scene. And one cool thing that this program does, and I don't just throw these out initially because it's real easy. It is a rabbit bomb when you start handing out spreadsheets, they're everywhere. So I just like to start with something really effective visually. But every single one, I want to show you this, every single one of those graphs is backed up with tables. And they look like this. So here's that first graph, drinking water requirements. Here's all the numbers that fed that. And I'm not gonna dig deeply into those. They jibe with what you would expect to see, I can tell you that. Based on all the information that Kim and Sasha provided to me, which, that's a big part of it, as you can tell. But yeah, it does it with the wastewater, does it with the debt service. So every graph you saw up there has got its own table. And then these can be exported into an Excel file. So every single one of these tables will turn into a tab on that workbook. So,
And are we still talking about, is this the 4 million?
this is the 4 million.
Okay,
Mhm.
just wanna.
Yep.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's the
Sorry.
biggie, and, it's smart to have a redundant system. That's for sure, and you'd be drilling into the Arapahoe Basin, as I understand it, right? Arapahoe Aquifer, looking at that PNA, which is a good water source, it's just deep. I think it's 1,200 feet is what they're thinking,
Yeah.
1,000 feet,
Yeah,
so it's expensive.
it is expensive and some new information that, I got some emails, Donnie, I think you got them, so I don't know if you read them yet, but, from Holloman's office, they took a look at, that well over there. And through the conversations with Water Engineering this week, and, Holloman's office, when you're looking at that existing well over there in the fire department, some information on there, that one is permitted for a max pumping rate of 30 gallons per minute, an annual appropriation of 15 acre feet, limited to municipal uses, production is limited to the Dawson Aquifer. They found no reason at this time it could not be rehabilitated or reconnected as a backup source of water. However, that's subject to limitations of that permit, which currently is 15 acre feet per year. That is in the Dawson Aquifer. Well, if they had to re-drill that, it would still be in the Dawson Aquifer. If we were seeking to expand the withdrawal allowed for that well, it would require a replacement plan. That seems to be the only aquifer that requires a replacement plan. And that is to prevent any material injury to existing water rights and alluvial aquifers. So with that information in mind, Water also sent an email this week that to determine the usability of that well, it would require a well pumping test on the existing lower Dawson well. And that would be in their guesstimation right now, $20 to $30 for that testing, $20,000 to $30,000 for that testing on that well, and a rehabilitation plan is a 6-figure cost there. So we're still looking at, $200,000-$300,000 just to determine the usability of that well, which is why I would really like to go down this other rabbit hole and find other funding if, at all possible.
Sure. Now, as part of your, rural waters, analyzing the system and doing the rate study and all that, we talked about, you covered a little bit doing an inventory of all of the pumps and all the system. Is that in the works? Are we continuing with that? Is that something that, where is that? Catch me up on that.
That is step 2.
Okay,
This is step 1.
right.
But we've talked about it, back when with Paul.
Mhm.
So everyone's aware of what needs to be done.
Mhm.
It's labor intensive.
Right.
It's
Very
labor.
onerous, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have a contract operator
Mhm.
with Paul. And, it's not a full-time position where I just walk next door and there he is.
Mhm.
So it adds to the burden, but we're happy, to come alongside and do what we can to make it happen. No matter how much we do, it's still gonna require some interface of, hey, I need some maps, you need to show me this, or, that kind of boots on the ground kind of stuff.
I just think it would behoove the water authority to have a plan going forward of a maintenance plan for the systems, so that we can budget for them and we can, put them in plug them into this program once we have an idea of, this pump's a 15-year pump, this pump's a 10-year pump.
Yep.
So
That's
I
exactly
truly
right.
believe that it's the right thing to do, is take that second step to get that done, so that.
Well, I think the diamond maps helps that too, because then we know where everything is, and you can put in like notes on the age, when it was installed, the size, all that stuff can be added in to
Right.
that program to track it.
Because then you can plug that in right to this program, correct? And then you can get your
This will-
outlook forward on what.
Yeah, this program will actually read diamond maps.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's designed to interface with diamond maps. So your point is smack dab on, as to how that is a really key piece for putting this together. Because like you said, you can put install dates. Now, you're not gonna have all of this, I know.
Right.
I mean, system I worked for had a ton of money and still, maybe 60% of everything was mapped. Just the way it is. But yeah, that, and, you know, then as you can look at it and say, man, this is just way too much. Well, you just go step by step. And your people that are in the field doing stuff can be taking pictures, they can say pipe depth, pipe material, condition of the pipe, and put it right into that tablet when you're on site. So you get more incrementally, you get a handle on your system, you know,
It's a
and get the
history
big
of
picture.
what you're finding out, and then we can go forward from that. Whenever we put a meter in or whatever we're doing, we can put all that
Yep.
dates in there. But
Yep,
the history that we happen to run
that's right,
across
yep,
is very
Exactly
valuable,
right.
so you kind of know project wise, if you're gonna need to replace this, or where we got some issues.
that's right, yeah, and you know, you can do all kinds of things to show different stuff, you know, pipe condition and all that. You know, with different layers, it's a cool thing, and sooner or later, everybody's gonna be there. You know,
Right.
it's just the way it is, and thankfully, with Diamond Maps, Ben Hill, the owner, he writes this so he doesn't run people off with it. Because this is called GIS software.
Right.
There's some GIS software out there that you gotta be a computer scientist to run it, you know, and you're not gonna have a guy out in the field going through all of that, he just won't even pick it up, you know? So yeah, it's Ben designed it, he's like, every time I add something, I'm nervous, you know? And, so no, it's a great tool to do this planning. It really, really is. And here's the inventory list right here of, you know, what you need to do. You know, buildings, dry electrical, fittings, valves, hydrants, tanks, instrument controls, lab equipment, you get it. And then it looks at, you know, how many do you have? How many need to be replaced, which is gonna be your bottom category. What's the estimated annual per unit replacement cost? So that's where you end up coming up with, this is what our system costs every year, you know, to maintain it.
Right.
So yeah, no, that's, I'm all for it. It's just a matter of workflow. And so a big part of what I do with every system is figuring out what workflow works. Because you got a town like Dillon that has 10 people doing one job, because they have all kinds of money.
Right.
And then you've got the opposite spectrum, you know, where you've got 2 people or 1 people just carrying a heavy load where you don't have as much time to devote to it. So a big part of what I do is just really get a feel for that and make it happen in line with what the workflow is in that particular town, you know, and so it helps. I live in Highlands Ranch, so, you know, I'm not far away.
Yeah. Right.
You know, been in Douglas County for 30, coming up on 30 years, raised all my kids, Parker, you know. So right down the road, that helps,
Yes.
Very much.
you know, and I don't have to go over Monument Hill. Hello. So, yeah, that's, it's a really, really good thing to do, and I'm all in for that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was very enlightening.
Yeah, you got it. I'll send him a printout of the graph and the spreadsheet that I talked about for both of those models.
Thank you.
And, you know, whatever you all wanna do in that regard. And I'm more than happy to follow up in any way. I'm not done because there's a lot of funding yet to be done.
Right.
And we can get going on the inventory. You know,
I think that's important to get moving on that, because that's gonna take a lot of time.
it will, and it gets you ahead of the power curve,
Right.
you know.
Unless we have weather problems.
Yeah.
Yep. Also known as Saturday.
Yes.
All right, yeah, and you all, you know, feel free to contact me, any questions, follow up, you know, whatever you'd like.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you
Yeah.
for explaining this, taking the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. Necessary, not always pleasant, but
Yeah.
you know, it sure relieves a lot of pain down the road.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Well, it makes what we do easier, I think, when we have,
Oh, yeah.
It
have
does.
numbers, not just blue sky.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and then, you know, surprise.
Right.
Yeah,
And
right.
then your money's expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, you've already given us two different scenarios right off the bat and we've got a much better idea of how, which way we need to go or can go.
Mhm.
So,
Good, good. All right.
Okay,
Real good. Anything else for me then?
We're good?
I'll unshare the screen here.
we'll be in touch.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
Or
No doubt about
we'll
that.
send Sasha and Kim to be in touch.
Yeah. I see Paul has made it on.
yes,
online,
yes, he's
so-
on.
Okay, so we will, we'll skip around here and, get Paul's, monthly report.
Okay, hello, everybody. So the water system is still doing great. The sewer system is, we do have one of the pumps installed. They needed to make some control changes because the system wants to look for those other two pumps that aren't there. So they're gonna do that this week, and then we'll be able to get that system back into auto. And then we'll be able to start pumping down the lagoon.
Excellent.
What's the expected time frame on getting that completely pumped down, Paul?
So the state has given us, they suggested 6 months, and I told them that would probably be a good idea, but I don't think it'll take, but I don't know, 2 or 3 months to do it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Paul? There was a question brought up to me, Paul, about a suspected water leak in the mobile home park. Are you aware of that, or have you?
Yeah, we did kind of investigate that, and at this time, we don't see a leak there. I don't know how it was, so it does get water apparently during the day, but by the time I get there, whether it's at night or in the afternoon, the water seems to be already drying up. So I told them that we would just keep an eye on it, and if it got worse, then we would look into if we need to dig it up. But at this point in time, we don't see that there's an issue. I don't see any extra water going through the tank at this time that would indicate a huge leak. So that's our plan, is just to kind of keep an eye on it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was on your radar.
Yes, it is.
I over there, Paul's visited over there. It's a weird situation, you know, on my pictures there, it's completely
Thank you.
dry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seemingly somewhere in the middle of the day. We're getting pictures from over there that there's water in cracks along this particular road. And then by the time Paul gets back out there again, last time he brought CNC with him, contractors that are who we use when we need to dig something up, the water was gone again. So I would not authorize, unless Paul made the determination that there's absolutely a need to break that concrete and take that cap off there, I would not authorize a contractor doing that. Also in the fact that the main is located about 200 feet from that roadway and not underneath where the water's coming up.
I got you.
And at this time with loss, we're not showing,
Any loss over there?
Yeah, that's.
yeah, at an 8%, we're not showing a huge loss.
Here was my other question on that, is do we even own lines in that mobile home park?
We do.
Is that owned by mobile?
No, it's owned by us. The infrastructure under the mobile home park is ours. The meters are ours. But, they were ready to take that off. Well, it was a weekend. In fact, it was New Year's Day, to be honest with you, New Year's Day. And I was getting calls, wanting to know whose responsibility it was for a leak over there. And I'm like, you're gonna have to elaborate. It's a holiday and it's an emergency call out. And, we're getting water coming up through the concrete. And I said, well, our processes are, Paul will go out there as our ORC. He'll make the determination if he feels that cap needs to come off. And if that cap comes off, Paul will be standing right there to look in the ground to make the determination what is done at that point. At no point, anybody outside of Paul or a contractor that we have agreed to hire to do that job put their hands on that infrastructure and manipulate it in any form or fashion, so
They'd actually rented an excavator to go and they were gonna
they
dig it
already
up
were ready to unpack it.
themselves.
So, Paul was out there on New Year's Day, evaluated it, there was nothing that day. The next day we were back in the office. And, before I came into the office, I stopped at the mobile home park and took pictures of what it looked like at 6:30 in the morning. And there was no water on the ground. 10 o'clock, I got pictures of the mobile home park showing water in the cracks there. But Paul and I'd already had a conversation and I knew the water main was located 3 to 4 feet off that roadway. So we could not figure out why the water is traveling from 3 to 4 feet this way and pooling right here underneath the roadway. So I called Paul again and he came back out here and pulled CNC with him. By the time they got back out there in an hour and a half, 2 hours, the water was gone again. And I just explained to them over there that until our ORC makes the determination that there's a possible issue underneath there, we won't authorize any construction being done there. And I've not had another call since then.
I just mean, you know how that goes.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Thank you for the
You're
update on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Item B, approved 2025 rate increase, and that was 3 or 3.5?
3%.
3%, okay. And that was water and sewer, or was that just water?
That was the total of the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The total of the bill.
Yeah, it was the total of the bill.
Yeah, it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it wasn't tied to one or the other.
no. It was just
So-
3% overall.
So on the billing, is that 3% split water sewer? How does that split?
Yes,
It would essentially be split, one and a half, one and a half.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question on that.
Unless you made the determination right, yeah, well, previously agreed to, that's what it would be, but
Right.
unless you made the determination right now to increase one or the other. Or revise that in some form or fashion, but yeah, that's what the original.
Now, my other question is, the numbers that Scott gave us on the rates.
Yep.
Did that have that 3% in it?
Actually, he had
Current
a,
rates,
Yeah.
With that 3%?
with the
increase?
9% that was currently put in place, he did not account for a 3%. What he was showing you today was if you were to do another increase. This is where.
So when you,
Right.
but what I'm saying is, when you say current rates, is that with the 3% we just
No,
approved?
sir.
That's without
No.
that.
Right.
3%.
'cause you
Without
got-
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that was
basically
my
what that said was the water, you were fine.
sewer's looking for 12%,
Sewer's looking for that $12.
$12, and yeah, 22% increase or $12.
Yeah. So otherwise the water, you wouldn't have to take the water up until, according to his graph, like 2029, and then it would go up like the 3%.
So if you were gonna consider a 12% increase in sewer. Or I'm sorry, 22%,
yeah.
$12, a 22% increase in sewer, you could put the whole 3%
That's what I was
increase
just
on the
saying, why don't
sewer
we do the
side.
increase on sewer?
And then just add the additional, what would that be, 19%? Right?
Yeah.
That would get you to the 22% on the sewer side and not increase the water side.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, you're just increasing the base rate for sewer.
Right,
You're
By
still
12
making the bill go up.
yeah, you're still
Yes.
making the bill go up, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you're not adding
22%.
you're not adding 22, it's 18 if, if you're considered, it's not, because you already got the 3%, right? They've already put that in the bills for January, correct?
We have not started that yet. That
February.
won't be reflective until the February bill.
February bills, okay,
right, yep,
okay.
because then that goes back, because it backlogs a month, so.
So what
It
do
would
you
go
guys
on
decide
this-
tonight is what happens.
Right, what you decide is what I will change the bills to that come out in a couple weeks,
Right. Right.
because at this time it's set for 3%. Divided half.
But,
Yep, 1.5, 1.5 on each.
mhm.
I would say we go to the 3% just for the sewer. Put it all towards the sewer, kind of get us back to whole there, if we're good on water. Instead of half and half.
Put the earmark it just for the sewer.
Yeah.
Because we already show with that graph that we're doing okay with the water.
Yeah, at
Right,
least till 2029, you're okay. with
Yeah,
it.
that's.
Assuming you don't have a new well and stuff, just in the basics.
right, where we're at today.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
yes,
what we
where you're
have
at today.
So what's the board's thought on the increase in the sewer? Is that something we want to put off until next month? Is that something we want to think about, sleep on? Before we do another 22% or another 18? In addition to the 3%. To get the sewer up to where it is paying its own way.
Would you have to have a public meeting if we're gonna raise the rates again?
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah, besides the 3%, which you already have set in.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
we're-
right.
Yeah, the 3% was already approved, so,
well, I agree with Brett. I think you put 3% right towards the wastewater. And not increase the water because. You're getting the increase anyway. Just put it, earmark it to that, it'll get us closer, get us 3% closer to that.
So you're just gonna change the billing.
yeah, when I do the 3%
Yeah.
increase, instead of putting 1.5, I'll just put the 3% on the sewer.
Mhm.
Is what I'll do.
Yeah,
And that would behoove people that don't use the sewer necessarily exactly equally with the water, like we were talking about
Right.
before, that they water their yard or they do water for something else that doesn't go back into the sewer system. So,
Mhm.
or if you're watering your animals.
so the. Additional increase we can talk about next month and see if we wanna, schedule that,
Schedule it,
yeah,
Okay.
if we
and
wanna
then have to have a meeting.
schedule a public hearing to
Public hearing.
do that.
And that would be an 18% increase.
That would be, I mean, to get it to where it needs to be, it would be an
Actually
18%
19,
increase.
wouldn't it?
19, yeah.
Yeah.
19% increase, to get it to where
On
the
sewer.
fund
Mhm.
is paying for itself, basically,
Right,
so.
okay,
I mean, we know nobody likes the increases.
So we don't wanna be without water.
Well,
Oh, well.
you don't wanna be
Yeah.
insolvent.
exactly, we wanna have operating revenue.
Okay, so next month you want a public hearing for the,
I think, why not talk about it? I mean,
Yeah, I will talk about it.
Yeah.
next month?
yeah,
Cause you have to publish it.
Yeah.
30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
I'll
yep,
just-
at least 30 days. That's right.
So I'll get it in the newspaper and,
Well, let's talk about it
We'll
first.
talk
oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna publish
Right.
for a public hearing.
Yeah.
They're gonna talk about it.
Right, next
And
month,
Jill will
and
be
then the
back.
following
Yeah.
month.
Jill,
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Jill's on, I
Yep.
think, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yep, All
Yeah,
right.
so you're just gonna discuss it next month and then
Yes.
we'll figure out where we're going.
Yeah, we're not publishing it.
Right.
okay, let's move on to new business, meter deposit and tap fees. I think this was brought up last month about meter deposits not being enough to cover the meter.
Yes, so the meter deposit right now that people make is $109.02, $109.02. When I talked to Paul, the meters are running $3.99. So.
And who owns the meters? Town own the meters?
Town owns the meters. No,
No.
Water Authority. owns
Water
the meters.
Authority owns
Water,
the
that's what I
We
meant.
need to get in the habit of saying
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Water Authority owns the
We're
meters.
trying to break the public of doing it. We do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we charge them a $3 monthly meter fee also.
Correct,
For how long to cover the extra cost or what?
yeah,
Forever.
until I think they're,
Paid.
I'll have to go back and
We'll
read.
have to
There
go
was a
look.
resolution.
yeah.
And I think that resolution laid out how long that was supposed to
Yeah.
be, and that was supposed to be, I think, till they were all installed.
I think so.
Right,
I think so.
Remember.
Yeah.
I'll go back and pull it.
For that $3 fee,
Mhm.
yeah,
yeah.
and we're not all installed yet, so, but yeah, so,
Well, does that actually cover the cost of the meter then? It doesn't. does it?
That fee itself doesn't cover the cost.
I mean,
of the
you're,
meters.
you're shorting about, $290.
Right, so shouldn't that meter fee be increased right off the bat, just?
Well,
I mean-
Well, and when you think about that, we replaced all the meters. And I think the $109 fee is just for new, correct? You're not charging that to existing customers.
No, it's when a house
new.
is sold,
So it's anybody new that basically
That's buying a new
transfers it into
house.
their name.
yes, when they buy a new
or
house,
or buying a house.
when they're buying
Mhm.
buying a house, so
Not
if I were
necessarily
to.
new house, it could be an old house, right?
Right, yep,
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, so if you sold your house and I bought it,
yeah,
I would pay that meter deposit. Basically, the idea is if something goes,
yeah,
and we have to replace it, then,
It's
Okay.
just a transfer.
Yes.
Sign transfer.
Yeah.
payment.
yeah,
a new or transfer.
and once they move, the person's in that home, when they
Right,
move and
they
they
get
close on
a
that house,
refund
that
on the
deposit goes
deposit.
back to them, the new person pays it.
Oh,
That's good.
okay, so it's just a meter
It's
deposit.
just a
Yes, it's just a
deposit.
deposit,
It's just a deposit if something,
were to go wrong,
Mhm.
but right now, the deposit the
Oh,
people are
that's what's
making
good.
doesn't cover the actual cost of the replacement.
And that was the thought of it, was if you had to replace the meter, it would cover the cost of the meter. That was the thought of it.
I interpret it this way. And correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, but we collect that deposit. If something happens to that meter that is at the fault of that homeowner, we have that deposit to replace it, because we have a policy in place that says the cost of repairs or anything like that to the meters is bared by the water authority.
Right.
When we're not taking the cost of that out of that deposit in any form or fashion. So I interpret that deposit, and because this was here before I got here, as a deposit there, kind of like you would pay a security deposit on an apartment, you
That's how
know?
I,
Mhm.
like a transfer fee. is
Yes,
how I treated
yes.
it, Or was told.
Yeah, so if something happens to it, it's their fault. It's kind of like our meter that we have for the water hydrants, you know? We charge them a deposit on that would allow us to recoup the money if they never return it.
Right. So if you're gonna, in my opinion, if you're gonna charge a meter deposit, you just want deposit enough to cover a meter,
Right,
you know, otherwise, what? It's pointless to me.
So like on that deposit, didn't we have to prove to the individual they caused it to get damage, or we use that deposit to fix it and they don't get it back if, let's just say it went bad?
I don't, if it just went bad, that's a cost we've always taken.
So they'll
on
still get the
ourselves.
deposit
They
back.
still
They
get the
would still get-
deposit back.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
if-
why I interpreted that was the meaning of it, you know, it's because I've never run into a situation like that.
That's on one.
Right.
And they've
So we're
always
getting
gotten
this
the deposit
deposit,
back.
but we'd have to prove that they did something to it.
Maliciously did something
Right.
to
Yeah.
it.
yes,
Yeah, took
To
it,
take away their deposit.
Yeah.
yeah, they took the lid and they started shoveling down and they, you know,
purposely broke it or
Yeah.
disconnected it in some.
Ran over it with a car.
Yeah,
Yes.
something, you know, we've just never
yeah,
had
like we've
anything
had the
like that
hydrant,
happen,
boom,
so.
broken right off.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to understand what it was
Yeah.
about. You know,
Yes.
exactly.
And that all happened on my property, didn't
Yeah.
Yes,
it? Now it's Brett's property.
yeah,
Or it's probably.
that's great. If someone runs over the meter now,
Well.
Yeah.
Put that meter.
anyway, so
Yeah.
that's,
So that could be part of our discussion next month.
Okay,
Rate
table it
increase.
to next.
Yeah,
month.
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
I understand it more.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you also had tap fees on that line item, what was it?
yes, so the tap fees and I included, I think it's included.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, okay, so the tap fees, you can see what they are here. And, oh, hey, there's my little thing, it was just in the wrong place. So then I included, when I was doing this before, I went and kind of researched other towns around us. So even if you just look at Elizabeth, so our tap fee for, say a 1-inch tap is 9,500. Theirs for a 1-inch tap is 15,000.
So we're not Elizabeth.
No,
we're Kiowa.
that is true.
That's when we had this.
Yes.
discussion this last year.
But I did pull up other people like Idaho Springs, Delta,
They're way
just so you
more
could
expensive.
see what is out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Grand
the
Junction,
tap
Mead,
fees are only applicable to new builds.
Right.
right,
So
so,
if you're building a development, and we still have, well, we still have that property up by the water tower, all around the water tower is still annexed into the town. So if that developer chooses to develop that property and put in 1,000 homes, you're more than doubling the population of Kiowa. So, you know, that's where that would, and those are negotiable when you have a development like that, you know, but I think becoming more in line with communities that are comparable to us would be advantageous to the water authority.
Mhm.
and yeah, it's not gonna really affect anybody who's here. It only affects
Right.
new development,
Right.
so. Anyway, it was just something for you to look at, to consider.
So is that the only possibility of new development is that?
right now, but if you look at our comprehensive plan that we just had updated, they did lay out some other properties that are not currently, they may not be annexed into the town at this time. But should something happen in the next 20 years, that the town is able to negotiate with those property owners to annex that in for commercial or anything like that, then those options are open there.
Right.
Just because they're not at this time doesn't mean anything. Anything can happen in the next 20 years,
Right.
So.
Is there a rule, in place about how far out Kiowa specifically can annex any land, like so many miles out all the way around or anything, or any specific areas they don't wanna go to, or they do wanna go to?
There's no restriction on how far out. I think your main restrictions are gonna come by the property ownership, like John Malone,
Yeah.
his land is all conservation. land.
Right, yeah, and I understand, and that's what I'm saying, it juts in and juts out around
Mm.
certain things, but years ago, I heard something, it was like 3 miles.
That's,
Wow.
yeah, so I was about to jump in here. So there's a 3 mile rule. So well, in your case, authorities cannot extend, annex land, well, towns, beyond 3 miles from their current boundaries without meeting some additional requirements. So you have to, municipalities typically adopt, it's called like a 3 mile annexation plan, that outlines how you will provide service to annexed areas. But, I can look into this, what some of these additional requirements may be here real quick, if anybody's interested.
Can I say something? I just had a conversation with somebody about that today, about annexing farther west before Elizabeth comes east. So that might be something to consider with annexing. I was gonna try to make it to the next planning committee meeting, but that's something to think about.
Think about. Okay. We have one more item on here I would really like to get to before we end this meeting, because it's a carryover into the town board meeting.
Okay,
So you wanna just table the other two, think about them?
yes.
Can I have a motion to table it?
Oh, yeah, because, I'll make a motion to table meter deposit fees and tap fees.
Okay.
With further discussion in the February meeting.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded, to table
Perfect.
meter deposit fees and tap fees until next month's meeting.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, thanks, Jill.
she's there, yeah. She's been listening quietly.
One last item on there, Civic Plus. Civic Plus is the town currently has their municipal code is through Civic Plus. That's who provides it online, okay? They have two programs I recently became aware of through the county. One is a mass notification program, and the other is a agenda and meeting management program. Both of these are kind of near and dear to our hearts, because we've had over the last 3.5 years I've been here, numerous situations with water main breaks that require water shut off in one portion of the town and another portion of town, or the whole town, to affect repairs. And the softwares we have right now through billing or otherwise don't currently have the capability to send out a mass notification to our residents, or even a part of the town. We only are utilizing social media and then putting some sort of flag on our website, if people go there. The county uses this program through Civic Plus for mass notifications. My key takeaways from the meeting I had with them earlier last week was the ability to send text messages. There's voice calls, social media alerts, which are mainly Facebook and Twitter. We use both, and our website. They allow critical messages to be transmitted simultaneously across all of those. So when we create a message, it'll shoot it out to every single one of those at the same time. Citizens can choose whether they want to receive text messages or emails or both. They don't have to settle for one or the other. There is unlimited emergency only voice messaging and text messaging. We can use geo-targeted messaging, which say there was a water main break in the mobile home park. we can isolate our messaging just to the residents in the mobile home park, that the water's being shut off or repairs are being made. I have the capability of doing this. Sasha has the capability of doing this from our mobile phone, no matter where we're at. We don't have to be in the office or have a computer. And we can also be authorized by FEMA to issue public alerts through their integrated public alert warning system. These are notifications during an emergency event that could involve FEMA in some form or fashion. When we had the gas main break up the highway and the gas was shut off to the entire town. I looked at this from a water authority perspective, but it can essentially be used by both entities. And I think that when we look at that one and the other one, by looking at it that way, it's a lower cost for both entities. For that mass messaging, the total, there's no setup costs. They're setting that aside, so we don't have to pay the $1,800 setup cost. And because of the size of our municipality, they're reducing it from $5,000 to $3,000 annually total. But if we split it between the two entities, it's $1,500 each. The agenda and meeting management program that they offer. We've talked about the ADA compliance of our website and offering the packets and the videos of the meetings and the inability of the website to hold that information in its entirety. This program is an add-on to our website that allows us to make those agendas through the program, shoot those agendas off to you guys for approval, track those approvals with you. And then once they're finalized, it'll shoot out to the website and load as a PDF and HTML, meeting that ADA compliance. The entire packet can be loaded on there. And then the video meetings can be loaded on there using a YouTube interface. The option they suggested to us was the select life option, that it has unlimited users, allows up to 5 different meetings and board configurations. There is a 14 to 16 week delay for implementation. It seamlessly uploads the, like I said, agendas, packets, minutes, supplementary documents. So our staff reports and such can also be uploaded on there separately. There's a one-time standard implementation fee of $1,895. Split between the town and the water authority, it's $947.50 for that. The annual subscription is $2,300. Split, that's $1,150 per entity. Total cost is $2,097.50. The total cost split out for each entity is $2,650 annually. Oh, sorry, annually $1,150, but to get it all set up, $2,650 per entity. So I think it'd be cost effective as long as both entities went with it. And it would meet all of the issues that we've been experiencing. We would have now the capability of doing the mass messaging and notifications when there's issues with the water authority, water main breaks or otherwise, and we can update with meetings, you know, whatever. But we have that capability there with this. So I wanted to get that out in front of you guys, see what your thought process was on that. If you feel that's something we can do. I feel like the budget can carry that. We'd have to update the budget to allow for that. I think maybe we could talk about that more at our special meeting at the end of the month too.
Yeah, you say this is the same system that the county uses?
This actually, you know, we keep having everybody tell us the county and Elizabeth are not meeting the ADA compliance. And I found out through my conversation with them, this is what they're using.
Cause the
So
red
both
alert thing is
Elizabeth and-
excellent.
Yes, both the county and Elizabeth use both these systems.
Okay.
They also have a website though, that Civic Plus, they pay Civic Plus to maintain their website too. We don't need to do that. I talked to our web designer and she's like, those are great add-ons. I think they would be very advantageous for both your entities, and that would cut down on us having to send Trish the agendas and then hope she gets them on the website in time. We can actually post these to the website at the same time we post them outside.
And you can make any adjustments or.
Yes, and it has a whole, you know, you guys are integrated on there too, so when you guys have suggestions for revisions or you finally approve it, we can track all of that,
That sounds excellent.
so.
Saves a lot of time and a lot of,
A lot of everything.
it's not duplicating work too.
And it, by doing it this way, it'll cut down on this core request mess that we've had.
Because
Right.
It'll all be accessible now.
Excellent. I have a motion to approve half of the cost of the Civic Plus mass notification and agenda and meeting management program.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve half of the cost of the Civic Plus mass notification system and agenda and meeting management program.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks, Jill.
There you go.
I'll talk to the town board.
But
Do
she
you want to
for
make
or
a
against?
stipulation
Choose
that
four.
if the town does not approve it, we don't go with it because of
The
the
whole cost
cost?
would
Do
be
you want to
on
make a
us.
stipulation of that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do I have another motion?
That's your, I'll make a motion.
Or revise the motion, I'm sorry.
Second.
I'll second it.
Oh, you want us to revise the motion?
You can, it's up to you. Do you want to revise the motion to include a stipulation that if the town does not approve it, we don't go with it?
I think we don't need to.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So I have a motion to adjourn and a second.
And a second.
All those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. We're adjourned at 7:03.